With great power comes great responsibility, and we all remember this from the Spider-Man movies. In fact, I think they say it in every one of the Spider-Man movies. But what happens if you get great power and you don't want to use it for good? What if you don't want to be a superhero, or you can't figure out exactly what your place is in the midst of all that? On this episode, we're going to be talking about She-Hulk, the first 3 episodes, and we're going to be talking about the themes and is it good? Is it bad? And all of that. So remember to like and subscribe, and let's get into it. Jen Walters is a lawyer, and she also happens to be Bruce Banner's cousin. That's right, Bruce Banner, the same guy who was the Hulk and who is the Hulk. Now, he's got this little thing on his arm now that suppresses him and means he's not going to turn into a Hulk, right? He's got this sort of technology. We'll get into that in a minute. But she is also a lawyer. Jen Walters is a lawyer. And the first scene that we get from Jen is her closing argument. She's practicing her closing argument with her friends. Well, one friend and another guy who everybody just supposedly hates, and he's this awful person, somehow becomes a lawyer, right? But she's practicing her closing argument. And in this statement, and in this speech, she's talking about how people with more power should be held accountable more. So people with more power get more responsibility, which is an evolution of the Spider-Man argument and the Spider-Man statement, a little piece of wisdom from Uncle Ben, that with great power comes great responsibility, right? And we all know that well. We've all seen that, seen all the Spider-Man movies. I think they say it in every Spider-Man movie. And here she gives this argument. Well, after that first scene, at the end of that first scene, she talks to the camera, which I kind of love. I like that sort of aspect of this. Then they go into the origin story where they get into an accident. She and Bruce Banner get into an accident, and his blood just somehow mixes with her blood, which happens all the time in accidents, right? In car accidents. And their blood mixes, and lo and behold, it's dangerous for everybody else. But because she's related to Bruce Banner, they have like the same DNA somehow, that enables her to become a Hulk. So now she's a Hulk. And that's sort of the first episode where we kind of learn the origin story of how she becomes the Hulk, a She-Hulk, and gets the name and does all this stuff and yada, yada, yada. So then we get into episode 2, where really the main storyline and idea of the show comes into play. And just so I can kind of give everybody a little background, I love most of what the MCU has done. I like a lot of their characters. I like a lot of how they've translated a lot of the comic book stories to the screen, and my favorite characters. And I like a lot, not all, but I like a decent amount of what they've done on the streaming services through Disney Plus. A lesser extent to what they did on Netflix. Daredevil was great. Anyway, not getting into all that. That's a tangent. But here we have a very interesting idea for a show, which is that we have a superhero show that's also a courtroom drama. And I have really enjoyed a lot of the original ideas that they have attempted to do with a lot of the MCU shows on Disney Plus, especially. I think WandaVision was incredibly creative. I wasn't as crazy about the last episode or two, how they wrapped it up, but I really liked the idea and a lot of the execution. And I loved how they did Loki. I thought that was probably the best show that they've done. Moon Knight was cool. Like I've liked a lot of the stuff that they've done. They've really tried to do something different, and that's really what you want with some of these shows. You want the Marvel universe to do something a little different with these shows because it gives you more freedom, right? A show, it's not a movie. It gives you a little bit more freedom. So I have enjoyed a lot of them, and I like this idea of putting She-Hulk in a courtroom drama, which is sort of her character from the comic books. And so I thought it was a very creative idea, the mashup sort of thing, and I was looking forward to it. But we don't really get that until episode 2. And in episode 2, we kind of get the setup with her and Emil Blonsky, who was the Abomination, I'm trying not to give too many spoilers, but that's kind of the setup. Because she's a She-Hulk, the She-Hulk, she gets put into this position of being a lawyer for people with superpowers because yada, 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 right? Story reasons. And then in episode 3, it kind of continues on some of those ideas. Now, let's look at Jen as a character. So far, I'm talking about the first 3 episodes here. So far, I think she's a weak character. And I know some people are going to be mad about that, but to me, I can't really see a fatal flaw. I guess her fatal flaw is that she doesn't want to be a superhero. Maybe that's kind of what they're digging into, that even though she says with power comes responsibility, that she doesn't want to use her power. And that's kind of the theme so far. That's kind of the theme and the message, is that she has been given this power and yet she doesn't want to use it. Like, she wants to just continue to be a lawyer. She doesn't have any sort of aspirations about being a hero except for being a great lawyer. And there's nothing wrong with being a great lawyer. And hopefully she is a great lawyer. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of a relatable fatal flaw in her from the first episode on. Because mostly what we get is how awesome she is. Mostly what we get is how she's better than everybody else. She's better than every guy. She's better than every man, specifically. She's just better than everybody. And she's a better Hulk than the old Hulk, and she's just better. And that just kind of doesn't make her very relatable as a character. She needs some struggles. She needs some fatal flaws. And I think that would have made her a much stronger character in the end, if we had sort of started with some issues that she has, right? And that doesn't mean you have to make her unlikable, but you definitely have to make her relatable. Like, and this is sort of part of why I'm doing this channel. Like, when you're doing a character, your goal isn't to make her likable. Your goal is to make her or him relatable. Make her somebody that we can relate to and we can believe in and that we root for. And we're kind of rooting for Jen, but this kind of here hit and miss in a lot of ways. I mean, I think it's kind of dangerous to make us, for a superhero show, to make the main character not really want to be a superhero. I mean, I get it. And other shows and movies have kind of done that a little bit, struggled with that sort of idea. But it seems to have fallen flat for me. And now getting into the themes and the messages of the show. For the theme, I've kind of gone over the theme already. The theme has been that with power comes responsibility. With more power comes more responsibility. And here she is, this uber strong person, or able to be this uber strong person. What is she going to do with it? And the message so far is that she should be using it more to some degree, but she's kind of being forced into doing it, which doesn't make her as much of an active character. I think that's another problem that I have with her character. She's not super active. Stuff just kind of happens to her. And a strong character is an active character, especially a strong woman character is an active character. She's kind of, stuff is thrust upon her, sometimes really conveniently. And here she is just kind of flowing through life. And maybe towards the latter part of this show, we'll get a little bit more of an active Jen Walters, and we see a little bit more of that in episode 3. But again, it's kind of a weakness of the show. For me, I'd rather have an active character who gets in trouble for being active than a passive character who stuff just kind of keeps happening to. And as far as good and bad, I'm not super impressed with the show so far. I think the writing in the first episode is really weak and really lazy. I mean, stuff just kind of happens. They just kind of put stuff in there for story reasons, like because they need to have it. It's almost like they were told maybe by Marvel, like, you got to have these characters, you got to have this stuff in there, so just throw them in there. And they don't really give us much of a story. Like, I don't know what Jen Walters wants out of life. I guess to just be a lawyer and be left alone. Otherwise, like, she gets to be a lawyer and be awesome at it, and otherwise she just gets to be left alone in life, which is okay. But like, give me some aspirations, man. Give me something of what she wants out of life that she's not getting. Like, give me a goal for her, even if it's the wrong goal. Like, that could have been the fatal flaw, right? So I just think the writing really wasn't good in the first episode. In the second episode, it got a little bit better because, again, it got into that really interesting idea of the courtroom drama slash superhero show. And then in episode 3, it kind of backed off in the writing a little bit because the B story was really weak and it was supposed to be funny. And I feel like they're trying to be more funny than they are sort of, not serious, but more than they're trying to really tell a great story. They're trying to make some jokes and do some funny, silly gags and give us some of these, special guest star kind of things. Again, some of that might have been Marvel. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that the show did, right? Because I think Marvel has a lot more like overlord control over some of these shows than we think, especially this one in a certain sense. Because the Hulk is so connected to all these other storylines, it's kind of easy to pull in some of these other characters. So all of that to say is, I think some of it is good. Like I said, I think the idea is good. It has a lot of potential. Some of it is funny. I like the fact that the name was just kind of given to her, that she didn't pick the name She-Hulk. I like some of this stuff in there about her being a woman in a man's world, sort of the corporate lawyer idea. Some of that is very interesting, and I like it. I don't think she's as strong of a character as she could be because of how weak they make the men around her. I don't think that makes a woman look strong for men to be idiots. I just don't think that's true. There's no equality in that. There's no strength in that. It's just, I'm better than an idiot, which really doesn't make sense. It makes sense, but it really doesn't make you look strong. And I like the way she talks to the camera. I like where she makes a lot of references to the camera and she breaks away and does these little conversations with the camera. I like that part with the audience. I dig that. And sort of a Ferris Bueller's Day Off homage. So I dig that. So that is my review of the first 3 episodes of She-Hulk. In the comments, tell me what you thought of it. So subscribe to my channel, please. I know I'm just getting started and this is only going to get better, but if you like it at all, subscribe to the channel. Go into the show notes, the YouTube notes there, and just click on some links in there. I've got a free book that I'm giving away. There's all sorts of things that you can do in there with more information. But leave a comment. Tell me what you thought of the show, and I will talk to you guys later.